So this is from Ameet in New York, who wants to know what MD Aware's opinion on the alkaline diet is and how it affects cancer cells. So I don't know what that is. So perhaps maybe Ameet, you can do a quick description first.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So my family's in India. We have a lot of misinformation that goes around on our on some of our texting things. And one of my medically trained relatives has put forward something called the alkaline diet as a way to treat cancer. Naturally, being a skeptic, I don't believe it. And she manages to provide a couple of papers here and there, which, again, I don't think are from reputable sources, but I just wanted to, ask an expert, especially someone who, shoots lasers at cancer cells.
Sure. Can you describe the alkaline? I have a vague idea of what you're talking about, but what is your understanding of what the alkaline diet is and does?
Yeah. So, I don't want to straw man, so I'm just using the words that my relative used.
Mm-hmm.
They said you eat foods that makes your body alkaline, which already flips a switch in my brain saying, what? Because cancer cells can't survive in an alkaline environment, it kills the cancer cells.
Okay. So I think there's a couple of problems there. The first is your body pH is very tightly controlled, extremely tightly controlled. You're usually between 7.35 and 7.45 sort of thing. So I deal with patients sometimes who are critically ill, critically ill. And it's a sign of imminent demise if their pH drops below 7 or rises above rises up to 8. So you really can't push your body's pH that far. Your body has got inbuilt mechanisms to manage that sort of thing. So your kidneys and your lungs are the main two organs that regulate your body's pH. And frankly, you will die if you push your body too much into either, towards the alkaline end or towards the acid end. The other thing is this thing alkaline kills cancer cells. I mean, maybe, probably, sure. If you get sufficiently high pH, yeah, sure. Alkaline will kill cancer cells. Yeah, exactly. I'd like to know what studies they're pointing to and how they what their models are. Because remember, if anyone ever tells you to paraphrase an XKCD comic, whenever someone says blank kills cancer cells in a petri dish, remember, so do bullets, right? There's a lot of things that can kill cancer. And the trick when we're talking about cancer medicines is finding out how to kill the cancer cells without killing everything else. And I think that's the biggest problem. So first of all, I don't think that any alkaline diet, any normal alkaline diet can significantly alter your body's pH. And second, I think if you did, you might kill the cancer cells, but you would probably kill yourself in doing so. So I do not buy into this alkaline diet, I guess. I think you're right to have your skeptical alarm bells going off.
It definitely sets mine off too. I think when anyone says, I've got this diet that cures a medical condition, I mean, for sure, diets do affect your health and stuff. And I'm sure that having the right diet, if you are diagnosed with cancer, is probably kind of important. You certainly don't want, a terrible diet that's going to make your entire body struggle to function normally. If you just ate crisps or chips or whatever you call them there, for weeks when you had cancer, that's not going to make it better. But if anyone starts saying this diet cures cancer, I just feel like, seems like if a diet cured cancer, then we might have discovered it in the last 1,000 years rather than in 2021. But it's for sure, it's always worth investigating these things. But also, I'd just like to say on what MD Aware said about, in a petri dish, that's always suspicious. I saw a study recently that was saying about aspartame causes cancer or something, and then they found out that in a petri dish, it with a clump of cells, it stimulated something or other. Yeah, but it turns out that aspartame breaks down. I can't remember which part. It's like it causes gut cancer or something, and it breaks down in your stomach, so it never actually gets to your gut. So although the study is a useful experiment of like human knowledge and furthers our knowledge about what aspartame does, to draw the conclusion that it therefore causes cancer from this is ignoring how complicated the body is and how much is functioning. And if you're starting to say alkaline kills tumors, it's like, well, how is it going to get there? Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of reiterating what he said. But yeah, so I think it's worth maybe looking at their studies and just being ready for their studies to just be super specific or just have some nonsense conclusion that isn't really supported by the data or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've observed a lot, is that people often try to draw causal links between things that aren't necessarily causally related, right? So they will say like, oh, in a petri dish, we raise the pH to like 9 and all the cancer cells die. Therefore, alkaline cures cancer. It's like, well, sure, in one sense, but that's not a very like realistic thing to do medically, right? We're not going to be able to, cure cancer with that knowledge necessarily. You need a couple more steps before you can draw some better conclusions. So there's always like a hidden little inference or something smuggled in, I find, whenever you get those sort of arguments.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Which brings me to a little bit of a meta question, which is, this relative of mine is medically trained, and she's putting out this information to other family members who may or may not develop an illness in the future. I'm an engineer. I'm no medical expert. I'm not even like tangentially related to the medical field. How do I put down this information? They're going to trust this person because, one, they're a relative, and two, they're somewhat trained.
That's a tricky one. So I think that you should really interrogate this relative and see, are they saying these things? Are they believing these things based on their training, or are they basing it on something else, right? So I think a lot of people have a certain level of cognitive dissonance. They want to believe something and they might have training in it, but they're just not engaging that part of their brain, the medically trained part of their brain, when they're evaluating this, right? And I think we see that a lot with religious people. And so I think that that's probably what's going on here. So I don't know if there's a way that you can have a conversation with them and see if they can try to justify it in a more scientific way, because I think a lot of this stuff is a little bit wishful thinking. That's just my opinion. But when it comes to other relatives believing this person because they're medically trained, I mean, I don't know how to approach that. That's really tricky. Katie?
I think maybe you can... I mean, people are more likely to trust someone they know, their friend or the person who lives down the street, than they are some faceless expert. And I think that's a difficulty of, we're seeing that with all the vaccine stuff at the moment, where people are taking this nonsense untested medicines rather than taking like vaccines which have been approved internationally all around the world, because they just it's a scary time and you just trust someone, and so they say it and you just take their word for it. That said, people can be won over by showing them the evidence sometimes, at least some people, and I think it's worth trying. And if some doctors, I think people can often have a lot of trust for doctors, but some doctors believe all kinds of garbage. They believe in all these pseudoscience cures, or they're homophobic, or they believe in religion or whatever. There's loads of different. Just because someone's a doctor, it doesn't mean they have a nonsense view. And I think that it's worth maybe finding a collection of other doctors who are also experts who say otherwise. Then we can say for sure, you trust Auntie and her position, and I'm not saying that she is poorly trained, she is an expert. However, her view is against the medical consensus here, and I can show you that because here is 10 papers that say otherwise, here is 10 doctors that say otherwise, and hopefully that will make people think without you trying to ostracize her or completely crush her reputation, which might then cause them to start feeling that they need to pick a side. You can just be like, well, she is saying this and it's just very controversial, so I wouldn't necessarily pick that over what your actual doctor says, who has looked at your body and your case, because there are loads of different cancer treatments. And you could even say like, oh, maybe that one could work in some situations, but what's important to do is listen to your doctor today, because they're the one who knows your body and your situation. But yeah, definitely, it's very difficult when you have someone who is an expert who is saying something garbage to get through to some people listening to them.
The other thing is, what kind of doctor is this relative of yours?
Oh yeah, that's a classic, isn't it? Are they a medical doctor or?
Yeah.
What kind of medical doctor?
No, they're a nurse. That's why I said medically trained, not a doctor.
Okay. So what kind of medical professional are they?
A nurse.
A nurse. Okay, sorry.
Not sure what field exactly. Sorry.
Okay. So my question would be, like, we're in medicine, we're very trained to respect expertise, which is why, like, I would never dream of speaking with authority on like OB-GYN issues or urology issues or whatever, right? Clinically, I'm trained as an abdominal and gastrointestinal surgeon. So I feel somewhat confident in discussing those with some expertise, but I would never dream of like saying something that contradicts what a urologist might say about the, urinary tract, or like the treatment for bladder cancer or something like that, right? Unless you've developed a specific expertise in that. So I don't know, maybe, there's a bit of a counterculture I've found among certain nursing circles, where they're very sort of almost anti-intellectual. Again, some nursing circles. So it can be tricky, but if this was my relative, I might ask like, what do the oncologists in your hospital think of that? What do the people who treat cancer think about that? Like those sort of questions, because then at least you get an idea that, or you bring up in their mind that they are, going against the majority opinion. Oh, it looks like the caller dropped.
Oh, okay. So looks like we've dropped the caller. So anyway, thank you very much, Ameet, for that question. It was it's an interesting and difficult discussion, and I think it's quite relevant now with the pandemic and stuff going on.